Welcome to Hartman Math. Today we're going to write linear models for some word problems. Before we get to that, a little bit of review in our warm-up of writing the equation of a line that passes through 2 points. Go ahead and pause the video here and work through so that you can write the equation. All right, since we have 2 points, we'll use the 2-point formula, also known as the slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 is equal to x over x2 minus x1. So y2 minus y1, make sure your y coordinates are on top. 120 minus 100 over 10 minus 0. We get 20 divided by 10, and that gives us a slope of 2. Don't stop there. Write the equation of the line. And we could use point slope, the y minus y1 equation. But notice that does start with a 0. Therefore, this point is on the y-axis. That is a y-intercept. We could use y equals mx plus b. M, b. So we get a final answer. Y equals 2x plus 100. So we're going to do linear applications as lesson 1.7. So word problems where we're writing linear models for these word problems. For example, number 1. Ed buys a laptop for $700. Its book value decreases by $100 per year. Write a linear model for the value of the laptop. We always want to start all word problems by defining our variable. So we're supposed to find the value, so we'll start there. Let V equal the value of the laptop. Always be specific. And then also, the value depends on time. So time is passing going to be on all these problems. So we'll say T will represent our time, and we can have that be in years. Just to remind ourselves. And I did use capital V here. You could choose whatever you wanted. Just be consistent. Whatever you use, say here, use that in your problem. So if we look through, there's a very important word in here that actually is signaling to us that we know the slope. And the word is per. Per indicates a rate. Like I was driving at 65 miles per hour, and a rate translates to us to be a slope. So our slope is going to be 100, but if we look right in front of that, it says decreases is going down. So it has to be negative, negative 100. And then the other part, he buys a laptop for $700. That's right now, which would mean that's an initial value, and that's what a y-intercept is, a starting or initial value. So we should be able to use y equals mx plus b. But in place of y, we'll put v equals. And in place of x, we're going to use t. The slope, negative 100. The y-intercept, 700. Example number 2. The United States debt is predicted to be $20 trillion in 2020. Apologies, this problem was written a little while ago. These were just projections. We are in the year 2020, and that is not really our current debt. We'll talk about that later. Also predicted to be $50 trillion in the year 2030. Write a linear model for D, the U.S. debt, and then predict the debt in the year 2045. So we have to start by defining our variables, writing a let statement. One of them they've told us, D, could be the U.S. debt. Let D be the U.S. debt. And once again, time is passing in this problem. So we could say T is time or T is the year. Kind of the same thing there. Be specific. Now, if we read through, there's no per in the problem, and there's no clue to finding slope. So maybe we don't know the slope, like our warm-up, which means we're going to need to generate a couple points. So the first part of the problem, $20 trillion in the year 2020, that translates to a point, something comma something. Time is always going to be your x variable because it's the independent variable, whereas the debt depends on the year. Time, nothing depends on time. Time just keeps ticking no matter what. Can't stop it. So time's always going to be essentially your x coordinate would be listed first. So 2020, comma, and we don't have to write it with all the zeros. We could just put 20, understanding that it means trillion. So we've got from the first part, the year 2020, here's our debt, time, and debt. So x coordinate, y coordinate for setting up the points. Now we got to find the slope. So use the slope formula. M is equal to y2 minus y1, except instead of y's, we're using d's. And instead of using x's, we're using t's. So d's have replaced the y's, t's have replaced the x's. So plug those in, find the slope. We get 50 minus 20 divided by 2030 minus 2020. So 30 divided by 10 is a slope of 3. We are not done. We have just found the slope. We're going to use that. But before we do that, what does the slope mean in this problem? Remember, slope kind of translates to that word of per. It's $3 trillion per year. And it's positive, so that means our debt is going up by $3 trillion per year. All right, let's continue. This time we don't have a y-intercept, so we'll use point slope. y2 minus y1 equals m times x2 minus x1. But again, we replace the y's with d's and the x's with t's. So we're going to substitute here, and we already know the slope is 3. You can choose either set of points. It doesn't matter. I'm going to choose this one. Numbers are a little bit smaller, not much. So I'm going to substitute in our debt right there. D minus 20 equals 3 times 2020. We would distribute. And this next step gets skipped, though. We would have 3t minus 6060. And then we have to add 20 to both sides. So kind of skipping a step, 2 steps in one there. Distribute, and then add the 20 to both sides. We would get our final answer for the model, right? The linear model. D equals 3 times t minus 6040. Now the second part of the question, predict the debt in 2045. Into our model, where do we put the 2045? For t, because it's the year. T equals the year. So substitute that in. D equals 3 times 2045 minus 6040. Use a calculator. You get 95. So the U.S. debt will be $95 trillion in the year 2045. All right. You try. Business pays $10,000 for an XR210 model superglosser. 10 years later, it will have a scrap value of $2,000. Write a linear model for the V value of the equipment. Go ahead and pause the video here. Work through it. Write your let statement. Decide if you know the slope or you need to come up with some points. Do whatever it takes to go ahead and write the model. Let V be the value of the XR210, or you can put superglosser. Make sure you're specific in some way. T equals time. We've got a couple points here. Pays for it. So right now, that one's kind of tricky. It's not 1. That would be 1 year later. Buys the equipment right now, so 0 time has elapsed. So first point, 10 years later. Those are your 2 points. Find the slope. You should get a slope of -800. That is a y-intercept. So we can use y equals mx plus b. Final answer, v equals negative 800 times t. That's the slope plus the y-intercept coming from our purchase price. That's it for today. We'll see you next time.